My name is Dan Rice. I'm a director of pre-sales in the Agile Management Business Unit, working with the Agile Central platform and product. How many Agile Central folks do we have in the audience? A few folks, rock on. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. How many folks using any of CA's continuous delivery suite of tools? A couple, okay, all right. So this talk is not a product pitch. All right, this talk is really about the processes and the mindset to be thinking about to be successful with Agile and continuous delivery, how to put those things together and the benefits that you're going to achieve by implementing these technologies and why they matter. So there's a lot of things in this space we need to talk about. So I'm going to skip the information purposes slide. Let's talk about the value, right? So Forrester did a study earlier this year, and this was one of the quotes that came out of the study. It says, we need to deliver more value to our customers faster than our competitors, or we're going to risk extinction. In order to be competitive today, we've got to build software very quickly, and we have to understand that every business is a software business. Regardless of what business you're in or what line of work you do, software is typically at the core of every one of our organizations. And so we have to be able to create software, make enhancements to that software, and do it very quickly with high quality. What we've seen in the past in many organizations is that we had really this paradigm of two opportunities. One was, let's build really fast, but we're going to have really low quality, or let's build really slow and have really high quality. Anybody familiar with those camps, right? So how about a third camp which says, let's build really fast and have really high quality? Sound like a better thing to do, right? So not easy to do, not easy to accomplish, but let's talk about what that takes and the benefits of that. So from a people perspective, when you do Agile and continuous delivery well, we've run studies that tell us that we have a 75% improvement in employee retention. And you say, how does employee retention tie to Agile and continuous delivery? When we have self-directed, autonomous teams that can kind of control their own destiny, if you will, we give them the tools that they need to be successful. They will enjoy what they do better. People enjoy coming to work better. They enjoy wanting to come to work because they know that the manual processes and things are not getting in the way of them being effective in the work that they do. From a process perspective, when we take Agile and DevOps or continuous delivery and we put those things together, we see a 78% improvement in customer experience, right? We bring the voice of the customer into our development processes so that their voice is heard. We're building things that are fit for purpose. We're building things that customers actually want. There was a study done a number of years ago. I always hear different metrics thrown around, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 to 70% of most functionality that's built into systems where customer input is not included are almost never used. So we don't want to invest our time and our resources, our good people and their skill sets in building things that our customers aren't going to take advantage of. Any of you ever worked on a development team or built software? So if you release functionality that somebody doesn't use, how does that make you feel? Really bad, right? Why do we want to waste our time doing things that nobody's actually going to use? So let's get away from that. This is kind of the obvious one, and that is when we employ the right technologies, and we're going to dig into a lot into this talk about what those technologies are, what we see is a 45% increase in employee productivity. Now, our most expensive resource, our most expensive cost in any business, any bottom line, it always comes down to the labor involved in building software, in building products. If we get a 45% increase in productivity of the valuable people that are working for us, what does that do to our profitability? What does that do to our ability to create revenue, right? So kind of a no-brainer, when we put these technologies in place, we see a significant increase in employee productivity. Just start off talking about a quick case study. One of our customers, Jewelers Mutual Insurance Company, kind of in a unique space in the jewelry insurance business in the US and Canada, had a real challenge with being able to have visibility into all of the work that they were doing. So being able to be more productive, to have connectivity across teams, be able to streamline the work that they do, they had a real challenge. So they came to us and they said, hey, we want a better way to work. And so we helped them implement CA's Agile Central product as well as CA's release automation product to help them move more quickly, define their work, create visibility in their work, understand where things were in the development cycle and their environments. And so what they saw is they now had the ability to have very clearly aligned teams. They were able to connect their strategy to their execution because they were able to see the work that they were doing. And so, just a quote from Phil said, what we really needed was a solution to streamline our whole way of working. We had numerous people working on projects, competing for resources, causing complexity. Now we're back in control. We're getting smarter every day, right? So we want to get smarter. We want to get better at the work we do. We want to constantly improve. That's what agility is really all about. So let's talk about some challenges to achieving continuous delivery. Maybe this is common in some of the spaces that you work. In the design space, we see that 64% of the total defect costs originate in poor requirements. So when we don't capture good requirements, when we don't do proper analysis and design, catch those things in a platform like Agile Central, give visibility to our teams of what we're building, get the folks involved that are doing testing, the folks that are writing the code together to talk, to collaborate. We see some pretty high defect rates. 80% of teams experience delays in development and QA due to unavailable dependencies. How many of you work in efforts that are multiple teams that are coordinated, trying to work together to deliver value to your customers? So when those teams then have dependencies on each other, the ability to track those dependencies, understand when team A has a dependency on team B and vice versa, maybe they both have a dependency on team C. We don't get in front of those dependencies, we run into a lot of delays. 70% of all testing is still manual. How many people still doing manual testing in your organizations, right? This is a big issue, right? So we want to get to a place where we can start to automate those tests and really move through those very quickly. Having the right environments to test in, having the right devices to test in. Dissatisfied with how long it takes to deploy features. Production outages due to configuration management. So when we get in, there are tools that help solve all of these problems, but let's just talk about the problem space that we're up against first. So if you're considering continuous delivery, if you're considering how do I get better at software delivery, there's a lot of things to think about. There are a lot of tools that play in this space across the entire SDLC, from plan all the way to monitor. So these are just the categories of tools, and there are multiple solutions in every one of these categories. CA doesn't play in every one of these spaces, nor do we plan to get into all that detail in this talk, but this is really about understanding that if you're going to embrace continuous delivery and continuous automation, all the things you need to be thinking about are what's up on the screen here. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to approach this talk from a little bit of an angle of kind of personas. So the various roles that exist within your development organizations, within your business, what things should you be concerned about, and what tools or platforms should you be thinking about to be able to track your work and get visibility? So let's first start off by talking about the goal of the portfolio manager. So the portfolio manager is someone that is interested in understanding where the highest level initiatives of the organization are from idea to outcome. So where in the idea to outcome process are we as a portfolio manager? Do we understand? Do we have visibility into our initiatives? So let's do a quick definition here. So initiatives are these very large things that take maybe many, many months, maybe potentially more than a year to develop. Those things typically are decomposed into smaller things that we would typically call business features. And business features are things that can be developed typically in about maybe 8 to 12 weeks. And we try to keep it in that quarterly boundary. Features are then decomposed into things that we would typically call user stories. And those user stories are things that can be completed in an iteration. So rolling those up to the highest level, the initiative, the portfolio manager wants to track that progress, but we don't want the portfolio manager to track that progress from the perspective of a bunch of project managers running around on Friday afternoon, going asking all the teams if they're on track so we can update a status report so we can determine if we're on track. Anybody still have processes like that going on today, right? A lot of heads shaking, right? So I don't have very many funnies in my talk today, but I'll throw one out, right? So the one thing that we always joke with our customers about is this: all projects are green until they're red, right? Why are they green until they're red? Because all of the project managers that are running around to all the teams saying, give me a thumb, are we up, are we down, we're doing Roman voting, and they update a status in PPM, or they update a status in whatever their project tracking tool is, and then 2 weeks before production, reality sets in, right? We're not going to make the date. And so, flip, it goes red, right? We don't want our portfolio managers to be surprised. We don't want to have to go to the CIO and say, sorry, because he or she's going to look at us and say, you didn't know that before now? How did you not know that, right? Well, if you have the right tooling in place, you can track the work of those initiatives. Those initiatives, you should get real-time status based on the story level acceptance of the work that's happening at the teams. So we shouldn't have project managers running around doing this. We should be able to tie that back to the actual work that's happening, the acceptance rate of the work by the teams, and that should calculate our progress. We're going to do that with a product called CA Agile Central. Now, quite a few people raised their hands. And not to get into a lot of detail, but CA Agile Central gives us the ability to track strategic work. So the work that we've agreed to invest in, we're going to track all of the initiatives within Agile Central. We're going to track all of we're going to decompose those initiatives into features inside of Agile Central, and then we're going to decompose those features into stories. Those teams are going to decompose that work into stories. Then that status is going to roll all the way back up in real time. So a portfolio manager will spend time in Agile Central looking at things like the portfolio items page, the portfolio timeline page, to understand if they're on track, to understand if they're going to make dates that they've committed to. Much of Agile is about making and meeting commitments. Let's talk about it from the perspective of the product manager. So the product manager, this is the person that's interested in those business features. So what features go into the product that this product manager is responsible for managing? They also want to track that work by the real-time status of stories at the team level. It always goes back to that. So we need a platform that can take those large initiatives, break them down into a series of feature backlogs, and track that work so the product manager understands where his or her features are at all times. What they also want to do is be able to prepare for an event like this. Anybody doing Agile at scale today out here in the audience? You've got multiple teams coordinating together. Do you do an event like big room planning where you pull everybody together into a room to have a conversation about the work that you're going to build? Okay. If you don't, what this is an opportunity for your entire organization to come together, your development organization, the things that you're using to build software, the folks that are building the software, the stakeholders that care about it, the folks that pay for it, the folks that do the marketing for it, and the customers who are across the front of the room in this picture that actually give you input into what you're building. In order to have an event like this be pulled off, there's a lot of preparation work that takes place. This removes the ambiguity, this defines the risks, defines the dependencies across all of those teams. And a tool like Agile Central is critical to put all of that acceptance criteria and that detail in front of the folks that make these decisions. And so you'll see in the front of this room, there are screens from Agile Central that are used to even run a ceremony like this to help you get the most visibility into the work that you're doing and the work that you're planning. The product manager is also going to use CA Agile Central to be able to track that progress of those features. Again, based on an iteration by iteration basis as the teams complete their work. Agile Central is going to be used to roll that data up so the product manager can understand if we're on track, if we're going to make our goals, and if we can make commitments to the market that we've agreed to make. Let's talk about the product owner role for a second. So the product owner is a role on an Agile team, and they're interested in execution, the acceptance of value within that team. So the product owner owns the product backlog for a team, so typically represented by the backlog that you see here. That backlog, then the team then takes the backlog that the product owner defines, and they pull that work into the iteration they're going to work on. They're going to iterate, they're going to do their daily stand-ups, they're going to talk about what's been completed since yesterday, what hasn't been, where are we at, what's standing in our way. The Scrum Master is going to take those things and run with, take those blockers and knock them down. The product owner is interested in, do we have movement on the work that we've committed to as a team? So most teams typically would execute on about 5 to 7, maybe 10 stories in an iteration. They should never be more than 1 or 2, maybe 3 days in length in terms of the team's capacity to be able to build them. The product owner is interested in that code that gets deployed. So how quickly are we churning those stories out? So I'll see some customers that they say they're Agile. We're doing Agile at the team level. We have good Agile practices. They have 5 to 7 stories, and they put everything into progress on day 1 of the iteration, right? So if your teams put everything into progress on day 1 of the iteration, and they complete everything on like day 9 or day 10, you're not doing Agile. You're merely doing waterfall inside of a 2-week cadence, right? And that is not the goal. The goal is to quickly move, quickly deploy. That's what these speed boats represent. How quickly can we get feedback on those stories that we're building? We're going to deploy that code to those environments. How automated is that process? Can we get code out to the various environments during the iteration? Can we move code through various environments from dev to QA, maybe a UAT or performance environment? How do we stand those environments up, and how do we monitor that to make sure that we're on track? How do we execute the test cases? So product owners are interested in a lot of things related to the development of value for the team. And ultimately, we say that the product owner is the single wringable neck on the team, right? So if it all goes south, blame it on the product owner. So you can imagine the product owner says, wow, there are a lot of things I need to be able to do my job effectively. So in the CA ecosystem, there are a number of tools that you need to take into account. Of course, we've been talking a lot about CA Agile Central. We maybe want to talk about CA Agile Requirements Designer. So Agile Requirements Designer is a product that gives you the ability to you can even take input from Agile Central, so pull those user stories in, define the flows that you're going to be, you're executing against, build out the test cases in an automated way so that you can have good test case coverage and have the right test case execution process in place to be able to build the software that you're building. CA Agile Requirements Designer feeds into several tools, so CA Application Test and CA Blaze Meter for performance testing, CA Test Data Management, so getting the right test data into the environment so that you can execute your tests well, right? So it doesn't do any good to have great test cases if you don't have the right test data to execute against those tests. CA Release Automation and CA Continuous Delivery Director are used to help manage the code as it moves from environment to environment. CA Service Virtualization used for environment management, used for creating virtual services for third-party interfaces and things that we need to get to that are maybe outside of the control of the team. All of this is about moving quickly, and so the product owner cares about all of these different pieces. CA Agile Requirement Designer is going to help. We talked about creating and optimizing those test cases, doing test case management. Output from things like Continuous Delivery Director can get fed back into Agile Central so that we can track the status of where a particular user story is in a particular environment. So all of this is about creating more visibility so that we can move more quickly. We can ultimately create more automation. Let's talk about the perspective of the Scrum Master. So the Scrum Master is relying on reporting to be able to guide the team and remove roadblocks so that the team can be successful. Every day it comes up in a stand-up where a team member stands up and they say, hey, the particular thing I'm working on is blocked and here's why it's blocked. The Scrum Master should hear that, ears go up, and they immediately go and try to figure out how do I knock that back down so the team can start moving again and moving quickly. So your typical Scrum process, the Scrum Master is managing that, but they need visibility. They need to understand, and again, the Scrum Master spends a lot of time in Agile Central. There are a number of dashboards, and again, not getting into the details of how the platforms work. You can head over to the Agility Zone if you want to learn more about some of these tools and physically see how this works. But Agile Central can be used for the Scrum Master to see the dashboards to understand what is blocked. So as soon as something is blocked that a team is working on, they can click the block status right in Agile Central, and the card turns red, pops up on the dashboard. The Scrum Master can see it instantly and be able to know that needs to get knocked down. Doesn't have to wait for the stand-up to hear that information. They can go tackle that. But again, this is about understanding how you manage the work and get visibility into doing the real work. So developers and testers. So obviously these, without developers and testers, we don't build good software. We don't build any software. So the developers and testers get those stories from that product backlog that's owned by that product owner. They pull them into the iteration, and then they begin to put those things in progress and begin to work on them so that they can produce working software. Lots of things that the development team needs to be successful across all of these paradigms. Obviously, they're going to use CA Agile Central to be able to track their work and understand where their work is. Where's my story? Is it in progress? What are my blockers? What are the acceptance criteria for the story? They're going to understand what are the test cases that are involved. Using tools like CA DevSecOps solutions to be able to shift left in terms of not just testing and quality, but also security, things like performance monitoring, performance testing, making sure they're using things like Blazemeter to run those tests as early as possible. We know that the longer it takes to find a defect in our software development lifecycle, the more expensive that defect becomes to fix it, right? So if we shift these things left, if we have good test data management, we can run good unit tests and we can run different test scenarios based on good test data. So we're not always just doing happy path testing, right? Maybe we're doing negative testing or doing some of these other testing techniques to be able to be more effective. We've got, we want to understand where our code is, what development environment it is. Has our code been promoted from development to QA? Have all the tests passed, all the integration tests passed in the QA environment? Maybe we have a third-party service that I was talking to a customer yesterday, and how they interface with a large company's application that the teams need to get to, but they can only get to it at certain times of the day or night. Their tests can only run at certain hours because of the cost of them interfacing with that third-party system to do their testing. So they used CA Service Virtualization to virtualize the interface between the system they were building and the system they needed to get access to, and in effect created a better way and more quick way to be able to run their tests and get good feedback to whether their code was working and it passed. If a team's building out APIs, there's a whole API management suite of tools and a strategy that CA has to be able to help you manage your APIs, secure your APIs. So teams that are building software need to be thinking about all of these different areas. Now you'll see the areas in gray here, right? So test requirements, IDE, source control, code analysis, artifact repository, continuous integration. Some of these things are places that CA doesn't play in, right? In some of these categories, or they don't have tools that help with the development teams at these levels. So we want you to understand there's a lot of things to be considering. There's a number of tools that help developers and testers be more effective and how they all play together. So where you see all the blue lines here, this represents input and outputs from these various tools. So as an example, maybe the release automation product, as code is moving from environment to environment, we've got test data that maps to those environments. It's going to make an automated call into CA test data management to get back test data for it to create test data that it needs to be able to execute those test cases successfully. It's going to call out and launch a virtual service so that it can do the testing that it needs. It's going to call into the API management services. CA Virtual Service Virtualization may call into API management to be able to have the API interfaces set up so that we can complete those tests and run those tests successfully. So again, a number of things to think about in order to move from a very manual way of working to a very automated way of working. So when we talk about continuous delivery tooling architecture, there are a lot of things to think about. So we look at what do we do from a portfolio perspective. We've talked about what do we do from a program perspective and how we decompose that work down into features. We've talked a little bit about from the team perspective and how we manage the work that the team does. But one of the big things to think about too are the metrics that are involved in measuring success with Agile and continuous delivery. So when we talk about team level agility, we hear burn downs and we hear velocity. We hear velocity burn down charts. We talk about defect rates and some things like that. Those are all very important things to measure from a team level. And the more automated we can have that. So if we can have tools that will tell us what our velocity is, if we can have tools that will predict what our velocity is, if we have tools like our smart planning features that are getting ready to come out with an Agile Central that will help a team understand, based on their history, the rate of acceptance of their work and sprints in the past, what they should be committing to on an iteration by iteration basis. Nothing more frustrating for a program manager or a product manager than to have a team commit to work that constantly falls out and it's being carried over from iteration to iteration to iteration. If the culture in your organization around development is, we didn't get it done this iteration, we'll just let it slide and we'll get it in next iteration. That's not an effective way of working, right? We want to be able to make and meet our commitments and move very quickly through those processes. When we're talking about program management metrics, we will first want to talk about making a commitment across these multiple teams of teams. So we talked about business features that we're building. So when we do a process like big room planning, like you saw earlier on the slide, one of the things that comes out of that ceremony or that event is the ability to say, we as an organization, as a development delivery group, we plan to commit to X number of features during this next 8 to 12 weeks that we're going to be building. So one of the measurements we want to have is, what's the throughput? What are we actually achieving from a successful completion rate of those business features? So If we said we're going to build 50 new features this quarter, and we build 40 new features this quarter, we've only reached about an 80% completion rate. If we're only reaching an 80% completion rate, we're really not being that effective as an organization. We really want to look at how do we increase the velocity across the entire program? What's the throughput across the organization? When we talk about metrics at the portfolio level, we want to look at things like return. What's the return on investment of the commitment we're making to these teams or of these teams, right? If we're talking about a delivery group that's 100 people and the average burdened rate of one of those people in the organization is $100,000 a year, do the math. If we're spending that kind of money to create working software, the question becomes, how effective is that? What is our return on investment? When we look at the amount of work that we're building inside of these initiatives, we can get to a certain place where we say, let's say for example, we've built 80% of the scope of that initiative, but we've achieved maybe 80 or 90 or more percent of the value that we looked to achieve from that initiative. So maybe we make a decision to stop building that thing and start building something else. Because we have good metrics, because we understand where we are in real time, we can make those kind of decisions. Business agility is about getting the right information to the right people at the right time to make the right decisions, right? Right people, right information, right people, right time, right decisions. If you have the right metrics, if you have the right visualizations, you can make those decisions. But what we find in many organizations is they don't have this level of data, they don't have this level of information. And so the decisions they make are, well, we think it's going pretty good, let's keep going. Hope is not a strategy, right? Hope is not a strategy. We need good metrics to be able to make those good decisions. We need to be able to help our executives understand why the work we're doing matters and how it's adding to the value of the organization. What I would tell you is that most executives I talk to, they don't care about Agile. They don't care about story points. They don't care about business features. They don't care about velocity, right? They care about things like throughput, predictability, productivity, responsiveness, quality, right? This is what they care about. If we can visualize, if we can show them those things, right? If we can show them how implementing these processes helps to improve employee satisfaction, helps to improve employee retention so that their labor costs decrease, right? These are the kind of things that Agile produces. These are the kind of things continuous delivery produces, and this is what they want to hear about. So as we look at the entire ecosystem of tools and technologies that CA creates, and again, they're all over the show floor. You can go out and learn more about all of these technologies. Lots of things to consider to be a continuous delivery organization, to be a good Agile organization. You need to be thinking about all these things. And if you're doing any of these things, you're on the path, right? So pat yourself on the back if you're doing anything well, right? But think about what's next. Agile, it's always about how do we improve. When we talk about iteration by iteration retrospectives, when we talk about inspect and adapt workshops that happen at the end of quarters after these big room planning sessions, right? This is all about continuous improvement. And when you get to a place where you've incorporated all of these capabilities around DevSecOps, test data, release automation, service virtualization, we didn't really even talk about app experience analytics, but let's talk about that for a second. So we want feedback in real time from our customers about the functionality within our applications, within our mobile apps, within our websites that they're using and how they're using them, right? We want to be able to measure, are the features that we're putting in that they've told us they wanted, are they working for them? Are they discoverable? Are they able to find the things that are working in the application? Do they understand how to get to the features that you've built? And so you can hook in things like AXA, App Experience Analytics. You can hook in things like App Performance Management to understand where are the bottlenecks in your application. So we know from experience that if somebody pulls up your mobile app and it takes them more than a couple of seconds to get a response when they tap on the screen, most cases they're going to hit the home button, it's going to go away, they're going to swipe it away, and it's going to be gone, and they're not going to think about your app again, right? They're going to find another way to get the thing done they need to get done. They're going to go find one of your competitors that does that better, and they're going to start using their application. People have very short attention spans these days, so the more you can do to solve those performance problems, to get better experiences in your applications, you're going to create a better experience. Now, a lot of things to consider, so the question is, where do I start? What do I do to tackle this, and what can CA do to help me do that? So there's a number of services that we provide, because so whenever you talk about transformation in these areas, right, there are really three things. There's always people conversations, process conversations, and technology conversations. We've been talking a lot about the technology, but make no mistake that you need to start with the people and the process. You know, CA is a fantastic software company and has obviously many, many platforms that you can purchase and invest in and partner with us on. But if you don't consider the process implications of that, a tool is not going to make you more successful, right? So you must have a process that maps to those tools. So we have a number of services. We have a transformation consulting practice that can come in and help assess your organization, understand where you are, understand where you want to get to, what does good look like, and help you build an organizational roadmap to help you get to where you need to be. We have coaching services in Agile and continuous delivery where we can come in and embed with your teams and work with your teams to help them understand what good looks like and how they can execute on those things. We have process-based training. We have platform-specific training on all of our tooling. We have something called the Agile Success Program where we can essentially come in and help you have a better Agile ecosystem and guide you in both our platforms and your Agile processes. There are a number of frameworks that we use to do this. So in the Agile Transformation Consulting practice, we have something we call Discover, Orient, Design, which does the goal there is then to develop that transformation roadmap to help you be successful. We have a framework we call Ready, Sync, Go, which actually will help you get ready and build a delivery group, define value streams, and be able to then launch one of those big room planning sessions so that you can get to better risk identification, better dependency identification. Will help you, kind of continuously improve in the program space. Our transformation consulting is really, I'm joking with Jeff back here about the horseshoe. We've been using this slide a lot this week and for the last couple of years. But business agility is really four key things. Step one is velocity and agility at the team level. So being really, really good at the team level, getting our teams to a place where they're humming along and they're building software successfully and more quickly with higher quality. Once we do that well at the team level, we want to incorporate step two, which is agile planning, work sequencing, and DevOps, and start to put that plan and sequence and deploy process in place so that we can scale our agile team, so that we can get more value out sooner because we focus on fewer things, right? So one of the key principles of business agility stop starting things and start finishing things. Most organizations have far too much work in process, and what we know from experience is if we want to increase the throughput that's coming out of our teams, we've got to decrease the work in process at the highest level of our organizations so that we're not just cramming things down onto people so that they can never come up for air and never be successful. Once we accomplish step two, we want to move into step three, which is portfolio agility, and now we start bringing into conversation around funding decisions and business implementation. How do we deploy? How do we involve marketing? How do we involve accounting and finance? How do we employ agile capitalization techniques to have a more modern business management approach and a more modern way of working? And then step four, full value stream agility, where we take everything from idea to outcome and we include that in our agile processes. So lots of things to consider. Our Agile Transformation Consultants are experts in helping organizations transform to business agility. From a continuous delivery perspective, we have our value-added consulting, our DevOps coaching program, where again, same thing, we'll come in, embed with, maybe we'll pick a project, embed with the teams that are involved in that project or in that product or that effort, and assess where they are from a continuous delivery perspective. What tooling are they using today? What tooling do they need to use to be more effective? And then helping them with the best processes to be able to help them be successful. This is typically for enterprises that are undergoing digital transformation, which is almost everybody today. Almost every organization has created a position within their company called the VP of Transformation or the VP of Digital, something like that, because this is front and center concern for almost all industries. If you implement Agile and continuous delivery well, you get a competitive advantage. You get faster results, you get higher quality, you get lower risk because you employ things like agility, business value. You've got resident experts that understand that work, and you start to operationalize these processes. You automate the automation so that you can move more quickly. When you do continuous delivery well, and you use the CA portfolio of products, these are some of the numbers that we've seen our customers have told us they've achieved. New business, higher profit growth, higher revenue growth, significant reductions in the total number of defects and the cost of finding those defects late, increased time to market and getting features into the hands of our customers sooner, more availability for testing, more availability of environments to be successful with. One of the big things we hear development organizations talking about is environments that are down or environments that are blocked, or maybe another team is using a test environment so they can't promote their code to test because another team's got their code in the test, or they've got a different version of certain things in one environment versus another. So lots of things that come into play, but if you can spin up multiple environments in an automated way, then you can unblock your teams and your teams can move more quickly. Reducing application deployment time by 94% by using things like continuous delivery director and our release automation platform to automate the deployment of that code. Overall improvements, this has improved staff productivity by up to 50%. It's in the monitor area, but I would say that across the board, if you automate tests, if you automate the execution of performance and security and all these things we've talked about, if you automate release automation deployment, you significantly increase the value that you can get out of your talent in your organization. Some real customer outcomes. So Nordstrom uses our service virtualization product, and they saw 75% less effort to set up systems and data, reduction of wait times, isolated their dev and test teams from frequent environment changes. Macy's test data manager customer were able to reallocate multiple full-time employees that were manually creating test data sets. Right? Test data is a big concern for a lot of organizations, and be able to, just think about it for a second. What is the cost of 6 FTEs in a development organization? And if you can free them up to do more things that are more valuable, these people are talented. They want to be able to have the best of their capabilities and their skill sets used. But if they continue to do mind-numbing things like creating manual tests and manual test data over and over and over, not a very fun way to come to work every day. Fresh and current test data. Large multinational bank used Agile Requirements Designer to reduce test case creation time by 95%, to increase functional test coverage to 100%, to reduce 4x reduction in overall testing time, 20 to 30% savings per project. Nike, service virtualization, increased test frequency, integration testing that was previously skipped, test setup time reduced by up to 90%. Now, this is a key, right? Integration testing that was previously skipped. All right, let's think about that for a second. We skip things because we run out of time, but what happens when we skip things? Quality tends to go down. Quality goes down, customer satisfaction goes down. So if we can speed these things up to be able to move more quickly, to be able to get more things done, to improve quality, we need to take advantage of these things. Vanna used CA Agile Central and our Agile Transformation Services, had tremendous reduction in time to market for new products and met more of their customer needs with innovative solutions.